Hello, my name is Connor Quinlan, and in this review I'm going to be doing a full review of the Nikon D800 camera that I have here, and I finally got after a month and a half of waiting, and that is due to this camera being a really revolutionary camera, and I've used this for about a week now. And what makes it so is that it's really the introduction of medium format photography into a DSLR size body. And it's not only that, but it's also the price. I mean, this camera is competing and outcompetes even cameras that cost tens of thousands of dollars for a price of just $3,000. Even by digital SLR standard, that's a very massive price reduction. When this was going to come out, I originally expected it to be no less than $4,000, but when it came out for a price tag of $3,000, that really surprised me and made me very happy. So it's no wonder that this thing is so hard to get. And if you haven't ordered one yet, you may want to wait until they become more available, or keep your second camera so that you can keep taking pictures while you wait. So due to all those reasons and it being so revolutionary, and for basically almost any photographer, this camera can do just about everything except for sports photography, and that's really the only place in where it's lacking, and what I'll be talking about in this review, as well as image quality, high ISO autofocus, and the body, as well as many other features of the D800. First thing that I actually want to start with is the body of the camera. Now, the previous camera that I actually owned was the Nikon D3X, which is a significantly larger camera than this one is by a lot, and that's not only just, widthwise here, but also this way as well. It was quite a bit larger, quite a bit heavier. This is actually even smaller than the D700 originally was, and I must say I do like it a lot more. Of course, that's really personal preference and how large your hands are, but for me, I have smaller hands. This fits very nicely in the palm of my hand, very easy to fit into a sling bag, which I like to carry lightweight equipment. I like it to be as easily carryable as possible, and this fits a lot better than my previous D3X did when I owned it. So this is a lot easier to carry around. The only disadvantage is carrying larger lenses. It's a little harder without a grip to be able to balance those vertical shots, which I do miss with the D3X. But you can get the grip, of course, with this camera. The only problem is it's way overpriced. For $450, that's really a lot of money, and I don't even think that includes the battery. For me personally, that's way too much. I would like one so that I could use it for those longer lens shots and to get that extra frame per second, shooting 6 frames per second in DX mode for wildlife shots would be nice, but until the price goes down, that's definitely not for me. However, if it's something that you want, then by all means go for it. Even though it's smaller size than the D3X, I gotta admit the button layout on this is phenomenal. I really do like all the buttons that they chose to put on this particular camera and how they chose to place them. The real changes with this camera in terms of buttons compared to like the D700 are the AF button over here, which performs a little differently in that you can't choose AFS-C or AFS-S. That's because you actually have to push the button. When you push the button, you'll be able to actually choose between continuous or non-continuous autofocus. And you can actually also choose whether you want all the points to be used or only 11 points to be used as well. And some people may think that's not as easily usable, but I personally think it's alright. The other new button that you have is here on the back, and this is especially useful for video photographers. You got a live view button that takes you right into the live view mode. Here I don't have a lens, so it's just black, but live view with this camera is much, much easier to use, and I will be going over that in much more detail when I actually do a review on how to use the camera. But for now, the live view is much easier to use, especially than my D3X, way easier to use. The controls are a lot more numerous on the back in this case. And what also makes it great for people who shoot video is that you can actually switch it from camera to video right in live view mode. And then when you want to shoot your video, you can just push the record button right on top here and shoot full HD video as easy as that. So this camera is actually a big improvement when it comes to video. Pretty much in the same class now as Canon, whereas previous models were not as good. The biggest improvement for me personally is the 60 frames per second that it can shoot at 720p. Other than that, some of the most obvious features right outside the camera is first the LCD screen, which is a 3.2-inch LCD screen. Nothing really big whoop there. It is a little bit larger and clearer to see, but nothing huge. Another cool thing is the ability to hold both SD and CF cards. I only have a CF card. I personally wish it could hold dual CF cards because they're a little bit quicker, but it's still cool that I can hold both the cards, so no matter what you have, this camera will be compatible with it. It's also got a full magnesium alloy body. This thing is just as well sealed as the previous D700 and the professional models such as the Nikon D4 and D3X, so this baby can pretty much take anything other than being fully submerged into the water. And then it also has an awesome viewfinder, improved from the previous D700. It has 100% coverage and is just as good as the Nikon D4 and other professional Nikon models, which is one thing that I really like about Nikon in general and this camera. A lot of their cameras actually have many of the features that the upper range models do, such as the autofocus system. The autofocus on this is a 51-point autofocus system with 15 cross-type sensors. It is very fast and very effective, and it's pretty much the same as what was in the D3X and the D700 models, but with a slight modification in that it can shoot better in low light conditions. It can shoot down to -2 EV instead of just -1, which is what the D700 and the D3X could do with their autofocus. So it is more improved for those of you who like to shoot low light photography. This camera will actually probably do better with autofocus than the D700 would. And then actually one more thing to go over with the actual body itself that was really neat. And for those of you who actually have computers that can process this, is that it uses a USB 3 cable to transfer your images instead of a USB 2 from the previous models, and that is actually 10 times faster transfer rate to your computer and that is really great, especially for a camera like this. If you're shooting RAW at full megapixels, 36 megapixels, and you're loading up a couple thousand photos at once, we're talking like a long time to wait with a normal USB 2 cord. With the USB 3 it's a lot quicker and saves a lot of time, so that can be useful for people who actually have that feature in their computers.
Alright, I am now at Rose Canyon on Mount Lemmon, and I have spent the last several days actually taking pictures with the D800 in order to get a good idea of the image quality capability of this camera. I've heard absolutely great things, and I am pretty pleased to say that I can say those things seem very true, at least for the model that I have here. The high ISO samples are extremely good. I have several images that I took around the U of A at my school at very high ISOs, from 1600 all the way up to 6400 ISO. The color retention, the dynamic range is also better than my previous Nikon D3X, which says a lot about this model considering it's twice as cheap and has a lot more megapixels in it. The color is absolutely superb, and I am very pleased with this camera, especially in terms of landscape photography. For those of you who are nature photographers, landscape photographers, there's no beating the image quality of the Nikon D800 here. The only drawback I would say to this camera is the battery life on it. I have been up here in Mount Lemmon for a day. I left yesterday evening, and I was taking pictures throughout this morning. I also took long exposures during the night for some star trails to see how well it did during long exposures. The noise control was pretty well. Taken at ISO 25 and 160. It's not, I wouldn't say more impressive than any other camera I've ever shot. Over a long exposure there was noise in the image even at the lower ISOs, but overall I was very pleased with the camera's color and the amount of detail still in the camera. So overall, for image quality, it's absolutely amazing, better than any camera I've ever had, even at the higher ISOs. You can look at DxOMark. I have the link below in the description if you want to take a look. Ranks Nikon D800 as #1 camera in terms of image quality. Even its ISO performance is higher than that of the D700 and the Canon 5D Mark III, which is very impressive, and it's what makes it so hard to get today. The video quality of this camera is very impressive. The D3X that I previously had didn't even have video, so that's a nice improvement. I'm not much of a videographer myself, but it does make quite an improvement over the video camera that, for instance, I'm using in this video, or some of the other ones I've had in the past. So it is cool to have nonetheless. And for those of you who are videographers, it shoots much more efficiently than previous models. It has full HD at 30 frames a second, 24, 25 frames a second, and then it has partial HD, 720p, and it's able to shoot 60 frames a second in that mode too, which is something I haven't really seen in many of the previous Nikon cameras. Performs very well in low light. I have tested it a little bit. I'm very pleased with the performance of it, and we'll definitely be experimenting with that more and possibly have a video just on the video quality of the D800.
So overall, the ISO of this camera, in terms of high ISO, is absolutely fantastic. And you can actually see some of the sample images that I took over the week at higher ISOs, ranging from 800 all the way up to 6400 ISO with this camera. And you can see them at full-size original images by clicking the link in my description below if you'd like to see that. Another interesting feature that was in more Nikon professional models, such as the D3X, that has now been incorporated into the D800, is different crop modes. It actually has a completely new one, a 1.2 times crop mode that has a 24 megapixel sensor amount. And the cool thing about this is it actually gives it 5 frames per second instead of just the 4 frames per second that it has in full frame mode. And that's particularly useful for someone like me who also shoots wildlife other than just landscape. So I'm really glad Nikon at least decided to put that extra frame rate at the 24 megapixel instead of just flat out 4 frames per second without the grip. Another thing that's greatly improved with this camera is the metering system that it uses. The previous model had a 1005 pixel system. This one has a 91,000 pixel system in it, and it does a lot better at controlling your exposure and especially white balance. One thing that I noticed the first time that I shot this is how well the auto white balance worked indoors. That's something that I've never even seen with any Nikon camera yet, or most cameras for that matter. Most of the time they come out really warm, but with this camera I was surprised to find that it actually came out almost perfectly accurate. So the metering system in this is definitely an improvement. Finally, kind of on to the last topics here that I want to talk about. There are a ton of things to cover with this camera, obviously. These are just the main points that I wanted to get through in this main review here. Obviously, there's more to look at, and you should check out more detailed reviews online for that. But I also wanted to talk about the D800E for a second. A lot of people may wonder why I didn't choose to get something like that, or whether it's something you would want to consider. For me personally, it's something that I wouldn't be interested in just because of the amount of extra editing work you'd have to do really with that camera. Without the special anti-analyzing filter in front of the sensor, which stops distortions from coming up, you can get those distortions, and although your picture is sharper, you will have to correct for those things. And that's something that personally I'm not interested in doing. I don't edit most of my works, and I shoot actually quite a bit in JPEG myself. This D800E is someone who's more of a RAW lover, who likes to edit their pictures a lot afterward and needs the absolute utmost best quality possible. Me personally, I don't think anybody really needs any more quality than the D800 has to offer. The D800E is sharper, but personally, unless you're printing gigantic prints like 4 feet wide or greater, really all the time, it's not something you'll notice. However, for those who want the utmost best quality out there and are medium format shooters who want the best quality in a studio, D800E is definitely the way to go and is worth the extra $300 if you want to spend it. So really quick before I end this, I'm going to talk about the issues that I found with the D800, but first before that, I want to give you a little bit of a size thing with the lens here. And this is a 14 to 24 millimeter lens, one of the largest, Nikon's largest wide-angle lens. And this just gives you an idea kind of how compact the body is on this camera. Really easy to carry and a real joy to shoot with, I gotta admit. I like this a lot better than my D3X previously, and that's saying something considering it's half the cost, and it definitely performs better. So the problems that I really had with it are the battery, and not just the battery but this door as well. It is really flimsy. You can hear there that it jiggles around. It looks like it could just break off pretty easily. Luckily there's a second door that secures the battery there. And the other issue that I have with the battery is that it's just pretty short-lived. When I went up to Mount Lemmon to shoot, it only lasted for a little bit of time before dying completely the next day, and I know my D3X could last several days even. Even with high shooting stress, it was much better with battery life, and that's the advantage of a larger camera like that. However, if you have that problem, you can get the grip if you have the money, or just getting extra batteries can help you solve that problem. The other disadvantage, as I mentioned earlier, is that it is slow. This is not the camera for the sports photographer. If you shoot nature, or any landscape, or still life, or studio of any sort, even wedding photography in low-light situations where you don't necessarily need as much speed, there's no doubt that this is the camera that you want to get. For the price and image quality that you're going to get, there's no better camera out there, really. if you need some speed, you definitely want to look into getting a different camera, because this is just not going to cut it with only 4 and 5 frames a second with the body alone. Even the 6 frames a second still just won't do it for full-time sports photographers. For me personally, it is a little bit slow. I shoot wildlife, so that lack in frames per second does hurt, but the amount of megapixels adds a little bit because it allows me more cropping ability. And I hate carrying around gigantic super telephoto lenses that weigh 10 pounds and cost thousands and thousands of dollars. With this camera, I can use my 70 to 200 millimeter lens, 2x teleconverter, and I can get very close to even small mammals or birds in the distance with the cropping ability of this camera. Luckily, it seems Nikon's also going to come out with a more introductory full-frame camera, a Nikon D600. Now, I don't have much information on this yet, and I will talk about it later, but it is supposed to be more entry-model full-frame digital SLR with less megapixels, but it'll be significantly cheaper as well. So for those of you who are amateurs or beginners looking to get a little more serious with your cameras, there may be something that will be more affordable in the future. Other than that, live view when you're shooting, it can be a little bit slow. As you take the picture, it takes the whole time to save and stuff before the live view actually comes back on, so there's a huge lag in the shutter, which I've tried out a little bit, and it was too difficult for me to shoot with personally. I never particularly shot with live view much, but for those who do shoot, I think that would be a little bit of an issue, especially if you're not using a tripod. So that's pretty much all I have to say about this camera. There is a ton more information about this camera to go over. I will be making more comparisons and reviews with this camera, as well as a how to use it camera, talking more detail about the functions and the newer functions with this camera. So I hope you learned a lot, and like I said, this is the ultimate landscape photographer's camera. Any of you who are interested in still life, who want the best camera there is, this is really the thing to go for.